to Shades of Migraine, a podcast series created by the Association of Migraine Disorders. Migraine isn't black and white, it's blurry and shadowy, but there are many forces at work trying to change how we think about and deal with this disease. We hope you'll enjoy listening to a wide variety of voices, including the perspectives of both people living with migraine and those that are trying to help. Each will share their unique shade of migraine. We once again have the pleasure of speaking with Katie Golden, a self-titled professional patient, as well as migraine and pain blogger, writer, patient advocate, speaker, and ambassador. Today, Katie will discuss some pretty emotional topics, including the impact of migraine on her career and her relationships, as well as national issues like the opioid epidemic, headache on the hill, and finding a cure for migraine disease.
My name is Katie Golden, and I have chronic migraine disease. When I was 5 years old, I had my first attack. I was on my way to my friend Sarah's birthday party, and all of a sudden, I couldn't see. I had an aura, which I now know was an aura, and the pain, the head pain that came with it, and the nausea and the sensitivity to light and sound, and I remember vividly, even at that young age, crying uncontrollably for hours. And this happened another time, and so my parents, neither one of them had experienced a migraine attack, they took me to the doctor, and I was diagnosed with migraine disease. And it was pretty easy to be diagnosed because I have had an aura. So for me, an aura, it's like a zigzagging shapes, but it's kind of in a crescent moon, and it starts small, and then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger until it goes out of my field of vision. So growing up, I had migraine attacks. They were very, very sporadic. Sometimes I'd have one a year, sometimes one a month, sometimes one a week. And then as I got older, I was right before my 30th birthday, I had a migraine attack and it never stopped. And that was 6 years ago. This hurts. This hurts my entire body. The symptoms that go along with it, it would take me out of school for not just one day during the attack, but for 2 or 3 days, because my whole body aches, I think the best description is I feel like I got hit by a truck. And so it took some time, took a few days to recover. So, I mean, there were times that I missed a lot of school because of it. And then when I had this migraine attack 6 years ago that has never stopped, I thought, okay, well, I'm gonna figure this out. It can't last forever. There's no way this can continue. So maybe this, okay, it's been a month now, but I'm changing my diet. I'm on a new medication. I'm doing this and that. And then 2 months in, it's still not going away, and I still couldn't return to work. Then I started to get concerned. And then in the 3-month mark, my doctor finally said, Katie, you have chronic migraine. What do you mean chronic? Like, I didn't know that was a possibility, that even existed. The technical definition is if you have chronic migraine, you have 15 days or more a month where you experience migraine. For me, it's 30 days. It's 24/7, 365. To minimize my pain, I do yoga. That took a long time to be able to do. And when you have a chronic illness, no matter what it is, it's very hard to get up and get moving. And, I credit to my lovely partner, my better half, my boyfriend, Kevin. He kicked my butt and was like, enough is enough. You need to be able to walk down the street without getting winded. And so I was lucky enough to be able to have a personal trainer who really helped me. And it was rough. It was really, really rough. But having some physical strength, gaining some of that back, makes me feel stronger, and it makes me feel a little bit more in control of what's happening to me. For example, earlier today, I just was starting to go downhill, meaning pain level was spiking and I was just not in a good place. So I stopped. I rolled out my yoga mat. I went outside, and for a good 20, 25 minutes, I just focused on the breathing and the movement and tried to wash away everything else. And it rejuvenated me. And I think that exercise in any form, gentle stretching, walking, I think it's so important for anybody with chronic migraine to do. And I know that it's very hard. I was the youngest vice president at a small community bank that I had been with for 8 years at the time of my diagnosis of having chronic migraine disease. I loved my job. I loved the people I worked with. I was in commercial real estate lending. I would lend money on hotels or construction loans for subdivisions, and had people working under me, and it was just a really, really great environment. And then all of a sudden, literally in a day, my life turned upside down. And of course, I didn't know it on that day. My company was extremely helpful throughout the entire process, which is not the norm. All too often I hear stories of people who try to work because they don't really have another option, and employers are not as great. So I tried to work for 2 more years. Literally, it got to the point where in the morning I would wake up and to see how I feel, and I would email my team and say, I'm coming in today, or I'll be in at noon, or I got to work from home today, or I'm in bed, don't even think about calling me. And so after a while, that wasn't fair. It wasn't fair to my coworkers who had to pick up my slack. It wasn't fair to my clients. And I was very upfront with my clients what was going on because, again, with small community bank, you develop great relationships, and they all knew what was going on, so they gave me a little bit of slack, but it just wasn't fair. And it wasn't fair to me because my health wasn't getting any better, and it was a horrible cycle of me either working or being in bed, and I just wasn't making any progress. And so after 2 years, my doctor said, you really have to stop working. I'm not one to just sit around and say, woe is me. So I found a website, migraine.com, which is a great place for people to interact. And they had writers talking about their own personal experiences. And I'd found it a really great resource and a great comfort to me at that time. And I said, you know what? I can write like that. So I literally wrote 3 articles. I emailed their general email inbox and said, do you need writers? And they said, well, I got a call like 2 days later. They said, normally our writers already have a blog, they've been in the space, they're not newly diagnosed, but we think that what you're saying you have a different voice that you can add into the mix. And so they took me on. And from there, life has changed dramatically. I mean, it has absolutely just given me a purpose that I didn't think I would be having. So writing for migraine.com, they have over almost 200,000 Facebook followers. So I get feedback all the time from what I write, and people asking questions or commenting, and it has just really opened up my eyes to how this affects so many people, and not just their lives and their work, but their personal lives. And, everybody has varying degrees of the disease. So writing then really turned into advocacy for me. I couldn't really stay quiet about things that I, was seeing going on that people need to be more educated about migraine. And it's so cliche, but it's not just a headache. Writing is definitely my brain's yoga. It's very cathartic. There are things that I write that I probably wouldn't tell somebody in person, And that took a little while to get comfortable with being that vulnerable. But again, the feedback is like, well, somebody needed to hear that, because they say, oh my gosh, I thought that was just me. I thought I just felt that way, or I didn't know that this was an actual symptom of migraine, that it's all related. And so that's what really keeps me going. But yeah, I definitely find that writing, it not only it helps me tremendously to get it out, but yeah, it's amazing when you see that it's helping other people. Headache on the Hill is an event that's put on by the Alliance for Headache Disorders Advocacy. It's a 2-day event once a year. In 2017, they just had their 10th anniversary. People from all over the country flock to Washington, D.C. Day one, we all gather together to understand some of the issues that we're facing in migraine. And they educate us about how to talk to our senators and congressmen who are going to meet with the very next day and ask them for certain things. And the asks, it's called an ask when you go into an office and you have an agenda. So we get educated on what those asks are. And the most recent asks are obviously more funding for migraine research. There are 36 million Americans who have migraine. And NIH funding, we can only get $25 million in funding. That's less than $1 of research funding per person who has this disease. That's mind-blowing. There are other diseases that have a very small, much smaller population of people that it affects, and they get $200 per person, $300 per person. It's just very disproportionate, and it's really goes back to the stigma that's attached to migraine, and people who don't get it just don't realize entirely how it can affect you. So that is number one, the big push with Headache on the Hill. And we go into the offices, and sometimes you meet with a senator or the congressman or woman, but most of the time you're talking to like their health legislative person. And so we have materials to leave behind, but the really amazing thing is that we get to tell them, everybody in our group, you get to tell them your story, and that seems to be what really gets them excited or thinking more about, you're not on our radar. We're not even thinking about that. But now that I just realized that you literally cannot work because of this. Or, a friend, that I've met, he's like, I pass out at work because I have cluster headache. When you hear those stories, I think that it finally they're like, oh, all right, maybe we should pay attention to this. And I've been 3 times, and it is probably the most exhilarating experience. And it was definitely my first foray into advocacy. In a year, $31 billion will be lost in productivity due to people who have migraine. $31 billion. We get $25 million in research. If you put more money into research, the economy is actually going to do better because those of us who have this will be able to be more productive and contribute more to society. My main squeeze, my boyfriend Kevin, we met at a house party 7 years ago. And at that time, I was episodic. I had him every once in a while, and I actually do remember being at his house, and I had a migraine attack, and I didn't use it as a ploy, but I really could not drive back home. So I was stuck on his couch for a little longer than he anticipated. But then I became chronic within 8 or 9 months of us dating. And it's amazing. It's 6 years later since I became chronic, and that guy over there is pretty spectacular. the fact that he stayed around, I hear too many stories of people whose relationships, marriages, break because of this. And he goes to doctor's appointments with me. He researches things. He sends me articles. I came across this, or have you heard about that? He's my partner. I wouldn't be where I am if he hadn't pushed me. You know, he hadn't pushed me to get off the couch and start to exercise and get stronger. I wouldn't be here if he wasn't like, you know what, you can reinvent yourself. Forget about what you used to do and embrace the writing and the connection that you can have with people and the education that you can bring. And he's my biggest cheerleader. One Christmas, my mom wrote Kevin a card, and it said, "Thank you so much for taking care of our defective daughter," which is still on our refrigerator to this day. And so he's kind of a saint.
My name is Kevin Lenneberg, and I am the boyfriend of Katie Golden. We met about 7 years ago at a house party, and very quickly started up a relationship, very passionate, fell in love. We're off to a tremendous start, and then about 8 months into our relationship, her migraines, which had been episodic, something that would pop up every once in a while, once every few weeks, knock her out for 1 to 3 days maybe, they became chronic. She started having them every single day, and that was quite a change in her life, a change in my life, a change for our relationship. It was a challenging situation when we got the diagnosis of chronic migraines, and for a long time, it was not accepting that this was going to be a chronic condition. It was, we're in this together because we're going to find the cure, we're going to find the thing that fixes you. And I remember I had these thoughts, and we'd have these conversations where I said, I'm with you here, I want to support you through this, I am supporting you through this, I don't think I can do this indefinitely, but don't worry, I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. And in my own head, I would always think, I don't think I have another year of this in me. But then we'd get to that year point, and our love was still strong, is still strong, and we just always found a way to push through it, and eventually came to accept that this is a chronic condition. This is who she is, what she has, but she's really reinvented herself in an amazing way, and our relationship has changed in a way that we make it work. We find a way to take advantage of the good times and support each other through the rough times. It's amazing seeing someone who has gone through such a personal transformation, as painful as it is, as much as you would never wish migraines on anyone. The fact that she has completely changed. Katie has gone from being a banker and focused on a career in that field to now she is a writer. She is a patient advocate. She is a fierce defender and promoter for those that have this condition, and fighting for more research funding and hoping that eventually better cures can be found. It's truly inspirational to see that journey that she's been on and to be a part of it with her. I believe that eventually a cure will be found for migraines. I believe in the power of science. I believe in the research that is being done. Currently, I know there are a lot of new things on the horizon that we're excited to try out in the coming years. And as science continues to advance at a more and more dynamic pace, I believe we're going to find cures for this awful condition. Working in healthcare communications, it's really been challenging to see how the migraine disease is perceived by the broader public. They think, oh, it's just a headache that you get every once in a while. They don't understand how truly incapacitating it is for those who have this as a chronic condition, the 4 million Americans that have chronic migraine disease. And so there's a real need to educate the public to better understand the severity of this and the impact that it has on our country and on the world, really. One challenge of being a caregiver is caregiver fatigue, which is when you reach that point where you are the primary resource that your loved one relies upon. And while largely you're driven by empathy and understanding, you reach a point where you realize you just don't have as much to give. And I think it's important to allow yourself to accept those moments and to not self-judge too harshly. and to acknowledge, okay, I've reached this point of caregiver fatigue. It doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It just means I'm at that rope's end, and we need to expand the network of caregivers that we call upon. So when Katie and I reach those moments, we say, okay, instead of it just being about us and within our own relationship and providing the caregiving that way, it's let's reach out to family members and friends and rely on them. And so I really encourage people to never get in a situation where you are the only one who is providing support to someone who has chronic needs. Be a primary caregiver, but also make sure there's a network that's backing you up that can be relied upon in times when you yourself need a break and a respite from your responsibilities.
Early on in my diagnosis, I was, on the internet just trying to find things. And so I came across the spoon theory. The spoon theory was created by a woman named Christine, and she has a blog called butyoudontlooksick.com. She actually has lupus. So the spoon theory applies to not just those with chronic migraine disease, but with any chronic illness. So the very basic point was that she was with a friend at a restaurant or something, and her friend said, "Tell me what it's like to have this disease." And her friend was like, I'm going to give you the regular answer I give everybody else. And her friend was like, no, I really want to know and understand. So her friend grabbed all the spoons she could in the restaurant. And you have one, is there one more spoon over there? All right, I'm going to give you, okay. So I go through my day and we each have 3 spoons. I'm chronic, I have a chronic illness, and Kevin doesn't. So when I was working, if I would get up and go to work, I would be exhausted at the end of that. I'd get up, take a shower, put my makeup on, dry my hair, drive all the way out there. And so to me, spoons is like currency. How much energy does that take for you to get up and go to work?
0 spoons, maybe half a spoon.
That cost me a spoon. So I only have 2 for the rest of the day. He's got 3. So then I got to go to work and deal with all that entails and then come home. And so that took that maybe took more than 1 spoon. And so then I've got 1 spoon and it's 6 or 7 o'clock at night. What am I going to do with that? Because how many spoons did it take for you to deal with work? Even
1 spoon. I still have 2 spoons left.
Yeah. Yeah, you have a stressful job. That definitely cost you a spoon. But then I gotta get home and we need to eat. I don't like cooking. And you're a good cook, but sometimes we're both exhausted. We've lost spoons. So it's, do I make dinner? Do I do laundry? Do I go to a yoga class? Even though that's a wonderful thing for my body, that's gonna cost me a spoon. That's energy. So what am I gonna do with this last one? And in a relationship, we talk in spoons. As in, okay, I only have 1 left. You have 2. These are the things we got to get done. Who's doing what?
And it's really a great metaphor for when we talk with our friends and family who we've all shared this story with, where they come to understand, okay, it takes more energy for Katie to do certain things. She has a limited number of spoons. And so they'll say, oh, I understand. You don't have enough spoons for this. Or do you have enough spoons for us to do this? And it's just a really great way of helping people to understand the limitations and have a way to communicate back and forth that resonates. And it really facilitates better communication.
Yeah, my family, my friends have all really, really adopted it. It's pretty good. Again, I originally thought when I got the diagnosis that I'm gonna find a cure. I'm gonna find whatever it is. I'm gonna change my diet. I'm gonna do this and that, and then it'll just stop. It'll just go away. But then I realized there is no cure for migraine at the moment. Hopefully, I am hopeful in the future that there will be, and so it became less about trying to find the cure and more about how to manage my pain and my issues, and all of the other, symptoms that go along with it. And so once I was able to go through the grieving process and actually reach acceptance, that also gave me a little bit more power in feeling like I had some control over it. First of all, I would say to someone who has migraine, you need a specialist. Your general practitioner is going to be a great resource, is going to be a great person to first diagnose you maybe, but to really manage your disease, you need to find a specialist. Headache specialists are in high demand. There are only 527 in the US that specialize in, they've taken an extra year of study so that their focus in medicine is on migraine, headache, cluster disorders. So that is really, really important, but I know it's very hard because you could live in a rural town and your nearest one could be a flight away. But I think it's important to get to the right person. Also, I think that patients need to understand that the doctors work for them. You can fire your doctor. Do it. If you're not happy, if you don't think that they're listening to you, if they don't believe you, if you feel degraded and demeaned by them, that's the wrong fit. And that's not your fault. That's their fault. So please get second opinions. I think that's just really important. I think a lot of people don't push back on their doctors. And I didn't at first, I didn't grow, in other situations, but then I got educated and then I found the right doctors who it's a partnership. And that's the way it really should be. And you should never walk out of a room saying, I have no idea why we're going down this path, with this new medication, or come back in 3 months and we'll just, see how it goes. If you don't understand what's happening, don't leave the room. And it's hard because there are patients, in the waiting room, but you waited your turn too. And so you're deserving of their time. So when I became chronic, the pain is so intense, and it's crippling. It's crippling even if you just have one migraine a year. I don't wish that on anybody. But when it's a constant thing, when it is an everyday, here I am, I'm hitting you, I feel like I got hit with a board upside my head, or there's the ice pick, the pain is ridiculous. I can't really, there are no words to really describe it. And so there are a multitude of different ways to manage that pain. I believe in a balance of self-healing measures like yoga and meditation, which I practice, and other people could do biofeedback and cognitive behavioral therapy. But then I know that there are medications out there that really do work for me. I've gone cold turkey on things, on everything, and that was pure hell. One of the things that I do have to use, which I use responsibly, is I use opioids. It helps if I'm going into a social situation or I have an event to speak at. Sometimes I might take a half of one and it will give me a little bit of boost, a little energy, and it will take the edge off. For me, they don't make me sleepy. Everybody reacts differently to them. And I work very hard with my doctor. She's fantastic about parceling them out, and I'm good and responsible about using them. But what's really important, I think, overall, is having more research so that opioids are obsolete, that there are other pain medications out there. I recently had a friend pass away from an overdose. He was originally using opioids, and then that went to heroin, and he was a businessman. He was in his 30s. He was married with 2 wonderful children. And the opioid epidemic it's real, but there are people who there aren't many other options at this moment. And, it's just such a fine line. I don't want to see another person die I don't want to see another family go through what my friend's family went through.
To find out more about Katie, you can visit her website, goldengrain.com. In an upcoming episode, we will be hearing from Dr. Robert Shapiro, a neurologist who specializes in headache disorders. He's also a professor of neurological sciences at the Lerner College of Medicine at the University of Vermont. Dr. Shapiro will be talking to us about the financial burden of migraine disease, increasing pain research funding, Headache on the Hill, and the opioid crisis. And thank you for tuning in to Shades of Migraine. For more information about migraine disease, please visit migrainedisorders.org.